I'm Giles Duley. I'm an independent photographer. My work mainly deals with post-conflict communities. I'm very interested in what happens to civilians who are caught up in conflict, but also what happens when the wars are over, the legacy of war. I've been working in that field for about 10 years as a humanitarian photographer. I mainly work with charities and NGOs and try and get the stories out that they're struggling to get out. So rather than work for newspapers, I kind of do it the other way around, and I work with the charities and then try and get the stuff published. I'm not really interested in the big picture. Whenever I go to a place, whether it be a refugee camp, whether it be a conflict area, I always try and find one family or one small group of people and see how they're coping, how they're managing, and try and give them that voice. Yeah, so in 2011 I was working in Afghanistan, and it was a slightly different story for me. I was actually doing a story on American soldiers, but the idea was exactly the same. I wasn't photographing them fighting, I wasn't photographing the war. I was photographing the impact of the war on that small group of American soldiers. And it was during that we were out on patrol one day and I stepped on an IED. I immediately lost both my legs and my arm. And at that moment I thought that was it. I thought I was going to die. I never lost my consciousness, and I remember lying there under a tree, and I've seen people with far less injuries succumb to them very quickly. So I thought that was it. Luckily I survived. I was picked up by a medevac helicopter. I spent 46 days in intensive care, during which my family was called in twice to say their goodbyes. Then followed almost another year in hospital, 37 operations. But eventually I was able to get up, get walking again. I went through very intensive rehabilitation. And I was lucky. I found a way to take photographs again. I found a way to carry on with my work. So 18 months after I was injured, I was back in Afghanistan taking photographs. And it was quite ironic because the story that I did was the story I was supposed to be doing just before I got injured, and that was on a hospital run by an Italian charity called Emergency. And it's the only hospital that provides free healthcare to people injured in the conflict in Afghanistan. And it was an important story and one I wanted to do. The irony, of course, was now I was photographing people injured in a very similar way to myself. I always said right from the beginning, actually, when I was injured, you know, it's very easy to look at the things I couldn't do anymore, but I always said I would always focus on what I could do and never on what I couldn't. And one of the things I realized, that although it was a bit slower and it struggled for me to get around, it's very painful and very tiring for me to take photographs, my empathy, my connection with these people would be on a whole new level. Because photography, good photography, is about trust. And now the trust is even greater, because I think when somebody is injured, or somebody's lost limbs, in a wheelchair, being photographed by somebody that's come from Europe, that's come over there, often there's a suspicion. But they see me and they see that I've been through something relatively similar. I didn't suffer as much as they do, but I've been through a similar experience. And I think it means that the connection is even better than it was before. You know, really early on, I kind of, you know, I described it as becoming the story. You know, I became the same story as those I've documented. So I think it was about 6 months after I was injured, I did my first photograph. It was a self-portrait. And I really wanted to show people what had happened to me, but also show them that I hadn't changed. Because it's one of the hardest things to deal with when you end up with a disability is not the disability itself, but that everyone's perceptions of you change. So people I'd known for years would kind of treat me in a different way. People I'd just met would be very different. And I wanted to show people that I was still the same person. So I did a self-portrait where I'm sat on a plinth. I don't have my prosthetic legs on, so you can see the injuries to my legs and to my arm. But I was trying to be as defiant as I could and just look in the camera in the same way I did. I called it my Greek statue picture, because I remember lying in intensive care and thinking of Roman and Greek statues in museums, and the fact that they're missing arms and legs quite often, but you don't look at those statues and go, oh, they're rubbish, they're no good anymore. You see the beauty that is still there. So it really was like turning the camera back on myself and trying to photograph myself in the way that I try and photograph other people. I don't really see people as victims. I see people as victims of circumstance, and there's a big difference. And really, yeah, that was a big turning point for me, to be able to tell my own story. You know, I was 3 days after I got injured. I arrived back in the UK. I was in a very serious state. The doctors thought I probably wouldn't make it, and my family was there to meet me. And my sister was there by the bed, and she could see I was trying to say something, and they removed the oxygen mask so I could speak. And my poor sister, I'm sure she was expecting me to say I love you and something more profound. But all I could say, and I don't even remember saying it, but the only words that I was able to say was, I am still a photographer. And that's the thing, photography is not a job, it's not my work, it's my identity, it's my voice. And I somehow felt, even from that early point, if I could return to my work, if I could return to photography, then none of this would really matter. You know, there are so many situations. I think, you know, what leaves me speechless is the strength of people, you know, and whether it be in a refugee camp on the Syrian border, whether it be Rohingya refugees, whether it be injured in Sudan, Afghanistan, and the strength of people to carry on. I look at them, and even having been through something similar, I don't know if I'd have the strength that they have. And it's that spirit in people, that's what leaves me speechless.